Briefing the diplomatic community in Addis Ababa, Foreign Affairs Minister Gedion Timothewos detailed multiple violations of the Pretoria Agreement by a faction of TPLF and called for urgent international support to prevent a return to conflict in the recent interaction. Gedion outlined several material breaches of the Pretoria Agreement, accusing a faction of TPLF of attempting to dismantle the interim administration through violence, collaborating with external forces hostile to Ethiopia, and delaying the return of internally displaced persons. He also highlighted the derailment of the disarmament, demobilization and the reintegration process and the refusal to adhere to the directives of the National Electoral Board as well as binding to the Pretoria Permanent Cessation of Hostilities Agreement.
We often see statements blaming both sides, calling upon both sides. I believe that this is tantamount to coddling the spoilers. When these kind of statements are issued, it enables the agents of chaos. These serial troublemakers and agents of chaos will be put on the same footing with the party that has faithfully tried to implement the Pretoria Agreement, with all our limitations. I hope that going forward, as President Getachew has said, at times, even when we're diplomats, we need to call a spade a spade.
The foreign minister criticized statements that blame both sides, arguing that such rhetoric emboldens agents of chaos and undermines efforts to implement the agreement. Thus, he urged the diplomatic community to distinguish between troublemakers and the party faithfully working to implement the agreement, emphasizing that equating both sides emboldens spoilers of peace.
They are attempting to dismantle the interim administration using violence. They are making contact and collaborating with external forces that are hostile to Ethiopia. They have derailed for months the return of IDPs. 4, they are engaging openly in hostile propaganda and rhetoric. They are inciting violence and a return to conflict. The federal government is carefully monitoring the situation. We will do everything in our power to ensure that the Pretoria Agreement holds, the ceasefire holds, and that peace will prevail in northern Ethiopia. We will rely upon all of you for your continued support in this regard, and I hope that your support going forward would discern and distinguish between the troublemakers and those who are trying to faithfully implement the agreement.
On his part, Tigray Regional State Interim Chief Administrator Getachew Reda provided a detailed account of the worsening security situation in Tigray region. He revealed that a faction of TPLF has forcibly seized administrative structures, rounded up interim administration appointees, and used violence against protesters.
The faction that obviously decided to conduct its own Congress despite opposition from the Federal Electoral Board, decided that it was the only entity entitled to determine the nature and the composition of the interim administration, without, of course, the consultation with the federal government. This led to a takeover of various zones and various localities in Tigray by this group, denying the interim administration access to significant parts of Tigray.
Getachew warned that the situation could lead to a complete breakdown of law and order and potentially reignite conflict. He also expressed concern over the involvement of external actors, describing it as a toxic mix that complicates efforts to stabilize the region. The interim chief administrator emphasized the need for international support to address the deteriorating security situation. Getachew elaborated on the internal divisions within the Tigray leadership, particularly within the Tigray People's Liberation Front, as a significant factor contributing to the instability. He revealed that a faction has sought support from external forces, further complicating the situation.
I would call on the international community and the federal government to do whatever in their power to help us avoid miscalculations, whichever direction they might come from. So it's often those miscalculations which have resulted in devastating wars, and the last thing Tigray is ready to entertain is yet another round of devastating war. And of course, any instability in Tigray is going to destabilize Ethiopia.
The interim chief administrator called on the federal government to take decisive action to protect Tigray from external threats and to hold accountable those disrupting the interim administration. Getachew emphasized the need for the federal government to defend international borders and prevent a relapse into conflict. In summary, the briefing underscored the urgent need for coordinated efforts to stabilize Tigray region and fully implement the Pretoria Agreement. In this respect, both officials expressed hope that, with the support of the international community and a decisive action from the federal government, peace and stability can be restored in the region, the Ethiopian news agency reported.